So, thoughts on the issue now? Well, overall, it's a decent story. Furman writing The Fallen is interesting, always, because he created the character, and he created a lot of this mythos. But some interesting observations. First of all, as I mentioned at the beginning, Carlos Magno's art here is actually done justice because he doesn't have a crappy colorist doing this. It actually looks like a half decent book that uses more than five colors on a page. And yes, it really works well. The biggest weakness that Magno used in my mind, I thought, was just the fact that, well, he used a lot of generic designs for the primes. I don't know whether or not he had access to screen caps of the movie or even Josh Nizzi's concept art of the faces that were used, but really the primes aren't very memorable. He made them up on the spots. They don't really match up. And then there's the Optimus Prime knockoff, which it's clear that's supposed to be an Optimus Prime knockoff. But then again, there may be more than 13 original ones here, but I'm not sure. And then we get a few instances where it looks like toy designs in a few shots, like he did with Demolisher in that one book. Just in that we've got like Rampage with his crab mode, or rather a Rampage drone, but looking a lot like the toy. But overall, it's pretty solidly drawn, I have to say. No complaints with the art on this one, unlike issue 3, which got utterly slaughtered by the coloring. I'm glad that this one vindicated my opinion of Magno's art, in that it was good but needed better coloring. He's not one of the best that IDW has, but he's still not bad. Anyway, as for some of the interesting tidbits in the book here, the first interesting bit is just the fact that the Allspark in this continuity seems to be, well, I wouldn't say that it's evil, but I would say from reading this that it seems to not have any concept of good or evil whatsoever. It's simply an artifact, a battery really that's just seeking more and more power. Not really with any compunctions as to how it gets this power or what sacrifices must be made, only that it wants more and more power, which interestingly requires the destruction of worlds. It almost does make one wonder about if this is an element of Unicron in this continuity, simply because of the fact that the Fallen serves him. The Fallen becomes changed and influenced by the Allspark and enslaved by it, essentially. Interestingly enough, now that I think about it, it's quite similar to how Megatron was in the first movie in terms of his obsession with the Allspark. The Fallen does everything in the name of the Allspark first, and that corrupts him, and then he eventually wants revenge on his brothers. Also of note, I don't know if this was a foobar by Furman or whatnot, but Primus is name dropped here. This is the first indication we've ever had of Primus possibly existing in the movie universe, and Chris Mowry's stuff established that the Allspark created the Primes. Now, what this means, I'm not sure. It could just mean that the Allspark is, like the Cyber Keys in the Cybertron continuity, just the repository of Primus's power. But it's still interesting that we've now got canon confirmation that Primus does exist in this universe. It opens doors for stuff like Unicron and such, which they probably won't use, but. And that really depends on a movie. Also, the tie-ins with Jetfire's Spotlight are pretty good. The pocket dimensions the Fallen keeps pulling weapons out of are pretty cool. And as I read some opinions online, it does help explain how the Fallen was able to beat the crap out of all of his brothers, being ultra powerful all the time, and having all these weapons at that time, but then utterly going down like a pansy to the Jetfire Optimus Prime combination. It's a lot more plausible in light of this, and especially when you're considering stuff that Orsi and Kurtzman have said with how the Fallen was envisioned in the movies, in that he was seen as weak, anemic. He wasn't actually at his peak. He was basically surviving off of eating newborn Transformers. One thing that was kind of dropped, though, compared to Mowry's comics, and this is more because of the way that Chris Mowry handled this in his book, based off of earlier drafts, was the whole idea of those obelisks that showed up that were shattered than Cybertron. Now, what Mowry originally envisioned, which doesn't seem to have been done here by Furman, is the idea that they were the personal pocket dimensions of the primes, and that destroying them, and they were essentially like the retreats the primes used. So by destroying those obelisks, you've removed their personal pocket dimensions, so you can actually kill them because they can't escape to them. Now, that angle is still open here, actually. It doesn't actually mention anything about this in the book, but it seems to kind of be discarded, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The only reason I really care is because I'm a canon Nazi, and again, apologies, Godwin's Law, and I actually give a crap about this kind of stuff. Overall, though, it's one of the better issues of Tales of the Fallen. The Sideswipe one was the weakest, I think. Bumblebee's wasn't that strong either. The Jetfire one was pretty interesting, but had horrible, horrible coloring. And this issue here is, well, it's pretty well colored. The coloring does the art justice, and it looks pretty good. It's a nice traditional Furman story. No real new ground in this. Nothing really new or earth-shattering that's developed, save perhaps for the premise that the Allspark has no morality whatsoever, and that, well, there's the whole door potentially open for a dark influence such as Unicron corrupting others through it. But solid read, better than some of the other issues. And next issue, we're apparently getting the Ravage issue, which is tying into Furman's next movie miniseries. And after that, I suppose we're getting the final issue, which is going to be Chris Mowry's swan song in the movie universe, sadly, with fittingly teamed up with Alex Mill and Josh Perez on art and colors, and starring RC and Thundercracker. So I'm really looking forward to that issue, given he pretty much made those characters interesting and made people want those toys. So overall, I'll say not a bad pick. You can pick it up if you want. It's not one of the worst of the series. Doesn't add anything new, but it's not horrible either. Tales of the Fallen, issue 4, out this week, out today, I suppose. This is General Techno signing off.